Great. Thank you so much. I assume everybody can hear me?
Yep.
Great. Again, thanks for a great program. Boy, I really enjoyed it. Terrific speakers. My name's Dave Bertoni, and I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Levisense Medical. I want to thank Ivy Family Office Network and Marty for the invitation to present today. And on behalf of the Levisense team and our partners at Castle Hill Capital Partners, Donald Dye and Mike Palazzi, thanks a bunch. I hope you're going to be as excited about this opportunity as we are. That's the point. Look, if you have any questions about my background, I'm not going to go into it for the sake of time. I suggest you go to our website where you can find bios for our entire leadership team, our advisors, and other information. So, how many times have you guys heard this one before? This is a unique investment opportunity. Well, I think it's true. We believe that Levisense offers an opportunity that's rarely found for investors, and the reasons are the following. We address a pain point that has a C-level attention in the healthcare continuum in the US and worldwide. So this is big. And that is the inability to prevent bed sores, the high cost to treat them, and losses from litigation. The integrated therapeutic market, let me see, let me get my poll down. Where was I? I'm sorry, the poll just got the integrated market for the therapeutic bed market, which is where we are, is about $1 billion. Secondly, it's growing rapidly, and that's because of the aging population. We're also kind of in the center of what we feel are the mega trends of healthcare, and that is namely telehealth, the Internet of Things, unique patient data acquisition. We heard a lot of that this morning, and I want to show you why we think this works out really well for us. Look, the technology works. It's consistent with clinical practices and healthcare spending trends, which is really reducing capital expenditures. We go in with a rental market penetration point that reduces the risk to the buyer, shortens sales cycles, and finally, perhaps most surprisingly, the investment really has a short horizon. And we're at a stage where you investors can afford a significant stake in the upside. So I want to talk a little bit about when I said it was pressure injuries were a major problem. I think you could even call it a crisis without being without engaging in hyperbole. And why is that? Millions of cases per year, 60,000 deaths. Those are equivalent to the opioid crisis, and they called it a crisis. So it touches a lot of people. It's extremely costly. In hospitals alone, the average 160-bed hospital will incur $6 million in losses, 911 days of added length of stay. Most of them are not reimbursed, and 16 plus deaths attributed to, and this is the important word, avoidable bed sores. So this has the C-suite's attention, I can tell you that for sure. Look, pressure injuries are common, they're deadly, and in fact, they say they're preventable. In fact, insurers call bed sores that occur during a hospital stay never events. Like a patient fall in a hospital, that's considered something that should never happen. They're not reimbursable for any treatment after it. So this causes billions of losses to hospitals. In fact, hospitals are required to report what they call hospital-acquired pressure injuries, and they're further penalized for them by Medicare. They pose an extreme liability risk. They're one of the most litigated injuries in the United States, accounting for over 17,000 suits a year. About 87% of them are found in the plaintiff's favor, and the average, and I'm talking the average settlement, is $250,000. Every single hospital has a pressure injury. Pressure injury is really the common term, the new term for bed sores. Prevention team. Every patient is pre-screened for bed sores at admission to make sure that they catch them and are not categorized as a hospital acquired. In spite of all that effort, in spite of all that spending, from all of the hospital acquired conditions, the one that proves to be the most intractable, the one never event that stands out, is pressure ulcers. It's not only hospitals, of course, where this happens, or it goes across the care continuum, whether it's in nursing homes, home health care, or acute care. It's a problem for everybody. There's another special group. Anybody who's forced to spend time in bed, either recovering from an illness or due to a mobility limitation, is at risk of developing a pressure ulcer. That's it, you, me, anybody. But spinal cord injury victims are particularly vulnerable, not only because of the limitations of mobility, but because they often lack feeling in the areas that are prone to bed sores. So there are 300,000 spinal cord or SCI patients in the US. And what happens is they develop a pressure ulcer virtually every year, every other year. They're quite frequent. And the cost to cure a pressure ulcer, grade 3 or 4, is anywhere between $75,000 to $100,000 per patient. The VA has a very specific problem, and that is because they're the largest SCI healthcare provider in the world, and they've classified this problem as a problem of special interest. Remember, the VA owns the patient's healthcare from end to end. So whether they're in an acute care medical center or a nursing home or whatever, they pay for it. I want to point out, just a side note, Christopher Reeve was an SCI victim, and despite all of his resources, he died due to complications of a pressure injury. So just to put a fine point on it, summarizing, look, they're considered preventable hospital conditions. Hospitals are not able to prevent them. They suffer tremendous economic loss due to unreimbursed treatment, penalties, litigation. This is a crisis level problem for the healthcare continuum, hospitals, nursing homes, payers, and the VA. So a little bit about what is a pressure injury. First of all, let me tell you about them and how they're treated. As the name implies, they're wounds that are caused by excessive tissue pressure from contact with a surface or bed or a mattress.
Hey, Dave, I just want to jump in here real quickly. Some people are asking, what's the source of the data that you're providing?
Sure. The data comes from a variety of sources. I'd be happy to share them. Most of them come from published studies. If it's the data about the size of the market and so forth, those come from published studies or studies that we've purchased. The 32 millimeters is something that's pretty well established, that if the pressure of 32 millimeters of mercury is exceeded, the blood flow to the tissue is restricted, and if the patient doesn't move to reduce that pressure, a pressure injury will occur. The problem is exacerbated by moisture, shear, friction, and other things, but pressure is really at the root of the injury. We can test what the tissue interface pressure is using a thing called a pressure map, like you see in the lower part of the screen. And this is a pressure mapping of a standard hospital bed mattress. Wherever you see red, That's 75 millimeters of mercury or above, and that's excessive. And if the patient isn't moved within a small amount of time, that patient will get a pressure injury. If a patient is laying on an existing pressure injury, it can get quickly worse, going from a stage 1 to a 4, sometimes in a matter of days. Stage 3s and 4s are so serious because they penetrate to the muscle or the bone and lead to infections, sepsis, and death. And one of the unique things about a pressure injury is that the recovery time is somewhere between 3 and 9 to 11 months for a grade 3 or 4. So you start out in acute care, you'll be treated there until the wound stabilizes, then down to a lower cost skilled nursing facility, and then down to home health care. So all that time you're under a doctor's supervision, but this injury will pass through the entire continuum. All right, so what is the solution? Pressure redistribution is the key to prevention and treatment. That is making sure that the excessive pressure is never allowed to develop, and particularly on the bony protrusions that are really so vulnerable. There are two quantities that define the efficiency of a pressure redistribution surface. One is immersion, and that's how deeply you go into the surface. The deeper you sink, the more your pressure is distributed. Envelopment is probably most important, and that's how well the surface adapts to the smallest contours of the body. Now, I'm going to tell you how our system works. It's based on a thing called a rolling diaphragm, and this was really the core technology the inventor came up with. And what I'll show you is that each one of these diaphragms is filled with compressed air. The air in this case is, we put 32 millimeters of mercury of pressure in there. Remember that? And what happens when you overpressure, it doesn't blow up like a typical balloon. It doesn't expand. It doesn't get pushed back harder, but it only can push back with whatever amount of pressure we put in there. So if it's 32 millimeters, that's the most it can push back. Our surface is made of hundreds of these independent cells, and each one of our cells permits an immersion of about 5 inches. So that was the start. Where we went from then is inside of every cell, we have a height sensor, which you see on this side, and a pressure sensor, which you see on that side. So the pressure inside the cell and the height of the cell. And from that, we can deliver an active, intelligent surface. And I'll show you how that works. Here I have a short video that I'm going to accelerate a little bit up to here. Right. What you're seeing now is, this is our test bed. We'll have a real person on it. On the left side is the pressure inside of each of the cells, and on the right is the height of the cells. The patient starts out, we set it at 75 millimeters of mercury, which is high. It gives it a really firm surface and allows the patient to get in and out of the bed really easily. Now we're going to set all of the cells to 26 millimeters of mercury. That's where we're setting it. And that, in fact, is where those colors turn that green color. Now the patient's going to move, and as he's moving around, you can see that the cells get pressured more completely. And then as soon as he stops, within 6 or 7 seconds, the pressure is where we had the preset. Now the patient is going to roll onto his back. You see how the pressure changes in all of the cells, goes through our algorithm, and the valves each control the cells, and it returns it to the 26 millimeters. The other thing you can see is you can see how the patient is laying in the bed. Well, that's really important if you want to show that you've complied with the regulations for moving a patient. And in case of litigation, this is your proof that you were complying with the care. So what you just saw was a demonstration of our active intelligence pressure management. The value to the patient, the caregiver, and the institution is that it reduces the risk of human error. The pressure mapping is continuously displayed, either locally or at a remote location. In fact, the surface can even be controlled from a remote location. The data is stored for verification and care compliance, and it gives a record of the patient's movement. Patient movement data is increasingly used for alerts, general health indicators. In fact, the research opportunities for this data has not yet been explored completely. Some other things, as I said, we have bed mobility. If we set all the cells at 75 millimeters, we'll actually lift the patient out of that immersion and allow them to get in and out of the bed more easily if they're ambulatory. If not, for the caregivers, it makes repositioning far easier. Other competitive systems use soft surfaces that can increase the risk of injury, not only for the patient, but for the caregiver during repositioning. A totally unique ability for Levisense sensor cell is the ability to create a cavity in the surface. So anywhere, without complicated user programming, you just merely depress the target cells and hold them. And there, a cavity is developed with a zero pressure zone, and it's created to float either a vulnerable area, such as the heels, or remove contact totally at the site of a painful wound. You can make as many of these or as whatever size you wish, and again, no difficult programming required. The surface has unlimited possibilities for customization, for patient handling during wound care operations, creating a comfortable custom surface for a patient, even using a bedpan without having the patient move. Each and every cell or section of cells can be independently programmed and controlled to meet patient needs, comfort, or clinical needs. So this is truly game-changing medical bed technology. It reduces the cost of care. It reduces the risk of injury for the patient and caregiver. It provides custom patient comfort. It records the care compliance and offers telehealth monitoring and remote operation. There's no competing bed technologies that has these capabilities, period. So we've worked with some of the most well-regarded experts in wound care and hospital management to inform product development. The awesome abilities for the active intelligence are built into the device, but the user interface was designed to be simple and intuitive. One-touch presets allow for the least experienced night shift assistant to use the device with minimal training. Regulatory and IP, regulatory requirements for us are minimal. It's a FDA Class 2 510K exempt product. Therefore, all we have to do is register it with the FDA and adhere to good manufacturing practices. We have a strong IP portfolio consisting of granted US and international patents pending, and I'd also like to add to that that there's a lot of trade secrets that we've developed over the development of this product. Our commercial entry point and part of the de-risking of the project is the sales and marketing strategy of the market entry point, which is we're aiming to replace a technology that was introduced in the 70s called air fluidized therapy. Since its introduction, the fundamentals haven't changed, and it's widely criticized by the clinicians and the patients. It's a rental-only market. The advantages to the entry into the market with rental are many: pricing, capital commitment risk, the low risk for the trials, durability questions, and others are all minimized. The rental market eases the difficulty of a market penetration due to capital sales and allows growth through debt financing. If you look at our competitor, the therapeutic surface is a mere 19 inches by 45 inches, and the patient really has to stay on their back. With us, we have a full customizable surface like you saw. It's make easier for transfer, and the cost of ownership for a care facility is about 1/3 of our product versus AFT. So since forming about a year and a half ago, Levisense has acquired the technology. We developed the sensor cell. We built a fully functional test bed. We performed lab testing to validate the critical immersion and envelopment. We've developed data capture and algorithms and user interfaces. And this was all accomplished with owner management financing and a seed round convertible note totaling a mere 1.5 million. We're seeking a $5 million Series A at a $10 million pre-money valuation, which we believe will be our final raise before an early exit. Currently, we're building this bed on a Umano frame, which we'll be testing in healthcare facilities we expect in April, May. Our targets are the partners group, that would be Mass General, Beth Israel, or Spalding, and we've got an agreement from them to test. We'll be working with a rehab hospital in Haverhill and the UMass Memorial Hospital in Worcester. So we're not limited to building we don't intend to build a surface company or a bed company. Our strategy is to exit by acquisition or licensing after a rental market demonstration in the Northeast. We'll rent and service a fleet of about 10 to 40 beds to acute care and rehab hospitals. However, if a suitable exit doesn't occur, we can expand in the Northeast market and other markets using non-dilutive financing because this is a rental fleet. And we use DME or durable medical equipment distribution partners. And then we can grow our revenues until a more lucrative exit is possible. All this is done as part of regular business in our industry. So I saw one of the poll questions, where else could you use our technology? Well, throughout the healthcare continuum, we've got acute care type of beds, what we call community beds, those that would be in skilled nursing or any place other than acute care, and mobile flotation protection. And we're working with companies in all those areas. Our leadership team is part of the mix. Mike McGarry right here was a former executive striker, who we assume will be one of our major possibilities for an M&A exit. Gary Magnet, local entrepreneur in the Boston area. Donald Dye, financing expert. Myself, Peter Rock, have both been involved in medical devices for years. Our advisors are from medical advisors, a fellow who runs a wound care clinic in Chicago. Howard Miller was a former executive from Hillrom, another one of our potential acquirers. We have Dan Berlowitz, one of the most respected researchers for pressure ulcers and gerontology. So I just want to recap. This is the end of the opportunity. Levisense has, on an investment of only 1.5 million, built and significantly de-risked a tested, user-controlled, data-driven surface. It addresses one of the most significant and growing problems in U.S. healthcare: pressure ulcers and bed sores. It's a problem which causes the U.S. healthcare over $11 billion in unintended and unreimbursed patient stays, and 4.3 billion in litigation costs. The market is eager for a solution. Levisense's opportunity to replace an outmoded technology with an established rental market or model will remove a lot of our sales barriers typical to the medical technology plays. In short, our group group's patented technology is centered at the nexus of like current problems, bed sores, and megatrends: telehealth, data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and actually moving throughout the healthcare continuum. There is financial room in this deal. That's really important. It's at a very early stage, so there's opportunity for our investors. On top of our 1.5 million management-led raise, we're offering that 5 million Series A. We're confident this will be our last raise. One last note: there was activity in the hospital segment last week. Hillrom purchased a bed-based technology company, Levisense, for 30 million plus cash plus deal. And they claimed it was because of their, quote, vision of advanced connected care. So this buttresses our confidence in the group. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I hope that you want to learn more.
David, there's been a few inquiries, and thank you so much for your presentation. So I just want to get back to what David's talking about. There's a couple of questions in Q&A. So if you can answer them via text, that would be great on the chat. I think people are very interested. There's some questions about who your competitors are, the size of the marketplace, legal, liability, things like that.